Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Quality Talks podcast. I'm Stu Day, one of your hosts. Episode 6. I'm buzzing about this one. I know I say that often, that I'm buzzing, but I genuinely am buzzing for this episode. All about navigating change, and I've got the amazing Jo Reeves joining us tonight. Jo's a highly experienced and accredited coach. I've been fortunate enough to attend some of Jo's training in the past, and she's absolutely incredible. So yeah, I can't wait to get into the conversations with her all around navigating change and her tips, advice, techniques. Yeah, we're gonna touch on all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's gonna be really really great. So what's been going on? Well, before we get into that, I just want to sort of do a check in on numbers. So YouTube wise, we're up to 139 followers. Awesome. Almost to that 150. Can we get there? Can we get there by Christmas? I was hoping we might get to 200 by Christmas or even the end of year. So, if you want to give me and Chris a big Christmas present, click that subscribe button and get our YouTube following up there. LinkedIn, we're over 600 followers on LinkedIn, on our LinkedIn page, which is incredible. Obviously, we've set that page up so that we can get interactions with people. So obviously, we're putting posts out there to get community interactions, questions for the shows, ideas for the shows. So yeah, but by all means, just comment on there. If you don't want to comment, then you can just DM us directly. Share your ideas, share your questions. As always, any questions that we ask out on the show, people will get the opportunity to win merch as well. So there's always a little added bonus there for you to get involved. I checked the Spotify numbers as well. I've not really checked Spotify much, but yeah, we're up to 50 followers on Spotify. That's pretty cool. So in all, we're almost at 200 followers. I think we are probably over 200 followers across all platforms, which is great. But we just want to keep driving those numbers up. And obviously, we do this because we enjoy it, but also we want to make good content as well. So your feedback is incredibly important to us. Your advice is incredibly important to us. So keep that coming. And hopefully we can keep recording episodes and dropping episodes that are of interest to everybody and are hitting the mark. So it's been a bit of a while since we dropped the last episode. Unfortunately, I was unwell. Much better now, so I got my voice back. So I'm much better now. And the episode that we were going to record previously, we've pushed out, but don't worry, we're still going to get Tommy and Harry on to talk about performance engineering and all that good stuff as well. But as I say, tonight is all about navigating change with our special guest, Jo Reeves. So what's been going on over the last few weeks? Well, other than being ill, as I mentioned, I got to attend Agile Knots last week actually, and I was able to give a talk at that meetup all around continuous quality and how we achieve that through people, process, tools, and ultimately try and drive the culture that we're looking to drive. So that was really fun. I do really love the meetup scene. Conferences are great, but I think sometimes the local meetups, yes, there's less people, but I don't know, sometimes they just hit differently because it's a local thing, it's a community thing. People are doing it because they want to do it, and just give back to the community. So really enjoy that. And I've got another talk coming up, an online talk coming up, giving the same talking about the same content in a few days. That's a Lambda test webinar. So I'll be again discussing the same topic. But then in December, I'm going to be heading over to Ministry of Testing Coventry, where I'm going to be running a workshop all around what is quality. So that's going to be really driven through sort of helping people understand some techniques and tools that they can use to really ask those questions within their organizations to try and discover what quality really means. So often we you know, we're really, really good at saying that, you know, quality is everybody's responsibility. Everybody needs to take ownership of quality, et cetera, et cetera. But what if our organizations don't really quite understand what quality means? And how can we then expect other people to then take ownership of something that maybe isn't defined clearly? So that's going to be really cool. So heading over there in a few weeks, check that out. So again, it's on Meetup. If you're interested in joining us, head over to Ministry of Testing Coventry, and hopefully see a lot of people there. So let's get into this episode then. As I say, navigating change. We've all been through a lot of change, no doubt, in our lives. Whether that change is through choice, whether that change is forced upon us, or maybe it's just general circumstance that happens, and it's neither necessarily good or bad. It's just change, right? But it can be quite difficult to deal with. And from a personal perspective, I've been through a lot of change this year. Obviously with changing jobs, and I've had some health issues that have caused me to have to change a few things in my life. And it's not just the change itself, it's then the impact that change has on others that can be quite challenging. So when Jo comes on in a moment, we'll be talking around all this kind of stuff. And I'm sure Jo's got some great examples. In fact, I know she's got some great examples of change, and in her own life and stuff like that we'll talk about. But I think this will be a really great episode just to kind of reflect on things, and think about how I could handle some stuff differently maybe in the past, and change and stuff like that. But more importantly, how do we handle it in the future? As I say, change is unavoidable, whether we choose it or not. So let's get into the episode, and I'll happily bring Jo in now. So let's get going. Welcome, Jo. How are you doing?
Hello, Stu. I'm good. How are you?
I'm amazing, and you know what? I am so happy to have you here. We were just talking backstage, and we're just having such a laugh. It's like it's so great to have you on the show.
Well,
So
we've already. Oh, sorry, I've
no,
interrupted you.
go. No, please go.
Well, we were already starting to think about what we're going to say, and we've covered Comic Con, Jabba the Hutt, inflatable costumes, Princess Leia, Leia. What does I say, Leia? Leia.
Is it Leia or
What else
Leah?
have we covered? I think that's quite a solid start,
Well,
right?
you knocked your light down as well, and we've had all sorts of stuff going on, haven't we? Backstage, honestly. Luckily, I mean, we should have just been recording for the hell of it, honestly.
I think so.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, thank you so much for joining the show. I really do appreciate it. I mean, we've known each other for a few years now. I think first met, well, it was probably during COVID, wasn't it? You joined the Agile
Yeah,
Leicester
I
meet
think
up,
so.
and I did an online. I
But
remember you
that was
doing
pre-COVID.
mindfulness. Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it might have been. Yeah, it might well have been. Yeah, I mean that's a while ago, but we've known each other for a few years anyway, and I'm very lucky that you're actually doing some training courses at Capital One at the moment, so I get to see you more often, which is even better.
Hey,
Hey.
even
um,
better.
so for those that don't know Jo, I'm going to hand over to Jo to actually introduce herself because I can't do her justice, honestly. So Jo, do a little bit of a sell yourself, girl. Do a little bit of an
Oh,
intro.
fab.
Go on.
Well, first of all, let's address the white elephant in the room. I'm from Birmingham. So I will be, I fully, I don't think I need subtitles, but I'm sure that I'll be dropping a few babs as we talk and as our conversation
And
develops.
what does
Bab, by the
Babs mean?
way, is a term of endearment for those who don't understand, no, don't know what that means, but it's Bab. So who am I? Sell myself. Well, I'm a coach. I'm a PCC coach with the ICF. The coaching world loves an acronym, doesn't it?
Does indeed.
I have my postgrad. I teach. coaching. I also do a lot of work currently around burnout, and I teach burnout too for experienced coaches. My areas of specialism, I guess, always sort of lean in towards women. I do work women's groups, group coaching for women, leadership, life, and everything else in between. With that, the strands that come off that are to do with, I guess, working parents. I'm a single mum. I've already caveated this, haven't I, Stu, that my boy may or may not rock up at some point. Who knows, right?
Yeah,
There's something
absolutely.
very
He's
important to say,
welcome.
like the iPad's not charging or something. Parenting 101, there we are. I also really, really, really love doing coaching outdoors. And so yesterday, actually, I was at the Birmingham Botanical Gardens, which is a gorgeous place.
Mm.
And it's been on the same site. It's existed for 200 years, which is a miracle for anything in Birmingham because, Birmingham City Council love to knock things down and build new. So it's a miracle that this place still exists. And so I host seasonal, or I host and run, who knows, seasonal day retreats
Oh, nice.
at the gardens with inspiration from the seasons and the outdoors. So yesterday was autumn. So we were considering what we need to let go of, taking inspiration from the falling leaves, etc. So I adore doing. I adore that as well. That's kind of who I am.
Mm.
I'm also a coach mentor for the ICF, and I've been coaching for blooming ages, maybe 7, 8 years as a coach. Prior to that, and I think it's important I share this because for a few reasons, really. First is like this is where I like to think that I earned my stripes working with human beings because
Mm.
um, I used to work within substance misuse and addiction for many, many, many years, over 10 years plus. And another reason why I want to share it is I'm really proud of that work, actually.
Yeah.
And I think it really did offer me like the foundation of the work that I do now. Actually, yeah. So I used to work in substance misuse and addiction, very romantic places, Stu, like HMP prisons, homeless hostels, probation offices. Um, yeah, I also used to work in some really, I won't name the estates, but I used to work in some very well known estates in
Mm.
Birmingham. I used to work in their GP surgeries where there was like bars on the windows and but yeah. So I guess I that's who I am. I think that's all I need to say about who I am. I adore the work that I do because I think um coaching was and maybe still is in some systems for the elite,
Yeah.
C-suite, senior leaders, execs, etc., or for those that can afford it. And I think that's. I was about to swear. I'm going to
Yeah.
drop it because I think it's important. I think that's bollocks because the world can be like brought to life by coaching, and I really am. I really want to try and yeah, break down those barriers to get coaching where it needs to be. Actually, because I think everyone can benefit from it. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's me.
Yeah, and I can't, I couldn't agree more. And I think even like a few years ago, before I started on my coaching journey, I actually felt a bit like that. It's like, is this for me? Does And I think just listening to you there about your background, and it's such incredible work that you've done over that time, and I'm sure that plays into a lot of what you do now, right? And taking those
Mm,
learnings um,
mm,
and just reflecting on all that time that you spent doing those different roles and bringing that into the sort of the line of coaching. So Again, thank you, Jo. I really do appreciate it. I know you're a very busy lady, so it's incredible to have you here. And as I was saying to the audience before you came on, this episode is very much around change and navigating
Mm,
change, and
mm,
we're all impacted by that at some point in our lives,
mm,
regardless of whether we choose it or it's
mm,
done to us.
mm,
It can have a massive effect. Even if we choose change, it can have a massive effect on us that we don't realize. Sometimes the actual impact that it will have, not just on us, our families, those around us, but also when we're not expecting it, that can sometimes be you know even worse. So whether that be with the loss of a loved one, or redundancy, or all those
mm.
different things that are happening so often. There's so much redundancy going on at the moment. I'm just It's insane. I'm just like,
Yeah,
every minute on LinkedIn is like somebody else is now looking for a role, and it's
yeah,
crazy. It's crazy.
yeah,
But
yeah.
all these different situations, I, in my experience, they're sometimes they throw similar emotions, sometimes they throw different emotions. So it's really difficult to then kind of deal with them. You can't. There's not really one way. I don't feel, maybe, but I've
Mm,
managed to sort of say, okay, this change is something I've been through before, but do I deal with it in the exact same way as I dealt with it the last time, or am I a different person now because of what happened the last time, and that kind of thing. Um,
mm, mm,
so I don't know whether, sort of from your experience, and just getting into the topic, there's stuff that you
mm.
can talk about around that impact of change, and any
Yeah.
sort of examples you can share.
Ah, absolutely. And um, I'm pausing because I'm like, you know what? Let's just say it, Jo. Um, so I was made redundant in February this year, and that came as a massive shock. And so, listening to you talk about changes that are done to you versus, or in comparing those that you do to yourself, or with
Mm,
permission for yourself, those that you instigate yourself,
yeah.
um, both actually throw up similar emotions, believe it or not. I guess when it's done to you, there's added emotion of um, rejection, maybe, and
Mm,
loss of belonging to that system, or yeah, all the big emotions. But so, and by the way, I experienced all of those with my redundancy.
yeah.
So yeah, I was impacted. I had redundancy in February. It's difficult because not only, I think this, speaking to redundancy specifically, um, it isn't just the loss of the job
Mm,
or the role. It's loss of connection.
yeah.
It's loss of the relationships that you had. It's the loss of familiarity.
Yeah.
Like, this might sound really bonkers, but it's kind of the loss of that commute to the place. Um, it's the loss of um, those really enmeshed kind of relationships that you have with people that
Yeah.
you work with. And then, of course, there's the loss of the self, sense of self and identity that that role or that position gives us. So, I share that because it's really important to acknowledge. And actually, loss or change of something can and will bring up similar emotions that are similar to grief.
Yeah.
That sort of the disbelief, the anger, the not believing it, all of these sorts of big emotions, because that's exactly what it is. you're processing it in like a grief. And I think, well, for me, that was really helpful. Fortunately, I had that awareness. So when the emotions, and there were many, came up, I'm like, okay, yeah, I've got to sit with this, whether that be anger or hurt or sadness or whatever, because that's the important part of this, what we're talking about, actually, because you have to, as big as the emotions are, and sometimes they're not very nice or a bit gnarly and a bit ugh, you kind of have to sit with them, acknowledge them. They're there to be witnessed.
Yeah.
Um, but redundancy, or it's also this, when you're navigating these changes, because just as to bring light to what you said, you can't avoid transitions in life, be them transitions that somebody else imposes to you, such as redundancy or an end of a marriage or breakup from a relationship or friendship, but also the changes that we instigate ourselves. Because, believe it or not, if I'd had chosen to leave my role and wave goodbye to the role rather than redundancy, I probably, not probably, I would have experienced the same emotions.
Yeah.
Maybe not in the same magnitude, but they would have been there. And so, I was coaching someone recently, and their experience was really interesting, and I was reminded by their story, based with my sort of lived experience too. And she had gone for a promotion, and had tried for this promotion at several points, and that's what we initially were coaching around. This career transition, this step up career wise for her. A few times that she tried for this promotion, she wasn't successful, but the third time or the fourth time, whatever it was, she was successful. So this is someone that, even was but her resilience was being tested,
Mm.
because she kept, she really wanted this promotion. I'll get to the point. So she got the job. Happy days. Oh my goodness. Loving this. It's all good, right? Everything's going to be rosy because I've got the job. It's something that I've wanted. It's something that I've been striving for and thinking about and giving energy to for maybe 12 months, maybe even longer. But when she was in the role, other stuff started to come up for her. And when we started talking and exploring what was going on, things that were coming up for her was like, um, you know, my team aren't inviting me out for Friday drinks anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not getting that. I'm not getting the same banter that I used to have. They're seeing me differently. I'm not experiencing the same joy that I used to have with certain areas of a role, which is really interesting because, again, what that is about actually the loss of what used to be,
Yeah.
and actually sometimes you need to grieve that loss before we can kind of move on, which is really interesting. And another example I can share, which is really fascinating, and again based on my lived experience. I was one of the many, many, many marriages that broke down during COVID, and me and my ex-husband, he's sound, we're all right now, by the way, but when we were separating, and it was something that we both wanted, we were both like, yep, this is the right thing to do. I I remember one time just sobbing and like these uncontrollable big tears, you know?
Mm.
And I'm like, I was observing this emotion. Like, what is this? What is this emotion that's coming up? And when I started to really observe it and feel into it, what it was the loss of what I thought my life would be.
Yeah.
So it was even interesting that this grief sort of stuff can show up even when it's what you assume something might be, or you've planned it to be something and then it turns out that it's not. Sometimes you
Yeah.
need to grieve that too, which sounds really weird, but it's really true. And actually, once I started to go, oh, okay, right, I'm kind of grieving the loss of not simply the marriage loss and breakdown, but actually what I assumed or what I thought my life was going to be like, and now it isn't. So that's really interesting. Um, as you can tell, I can go off on all sorts of tangents, Stu.
I think
So I'm
it,
going to pause and invite you to like maybe
yeah,
focus on something specific or what. Mm,
I think what's interesting there, Joe, is the use of the word grief. And for me, I associate grief, and it's only when like listening to you there, it's kind of gone, almost like a light bulb in my own brain. It's just triggered because when anybody talks to me about experiencing grief, I automatically go to I've lost someone, someone has
mm,
died, and I'm grieving for them.
mm.
But actually, you're right. We actually grieve all the time for different things, but we don't associate it to grieving, do we?
No, yeah.
Well, I certainly don't. Anyway, and just I mean, your point about the changing roles. Now, I changed roles. I changed jobs earlier this year. I made the decision to leave Dunelm as an example.
Mm,
It wasn't something I was planning to do. It circumstances happened, and I chose that path. Um, and I'm still in that mode of grieving because obviously I had great relationships there, and connections, and spent 5 years of my life there building up, in terms of the role I was doing, the team I had, etc., etc. And I've had moments where, I'm loving it at Capital One now. It's great, and really, really enjoying it. But that's taken 6 months for me in that role to really start feeling like I
mm.
belong. And that's not nothing to do with the people around me. The people around me are amazing. It's that's me. It's more about me, and me convincing myself, and kind of like letting go of what was
Yeah.
and taking hold of what is, and running with it and rolling with it. Um, and I still have moments, where it's kind of like, I don't question the decision I made because I know it was the right decision. But to your point, it's that direction that I was going in my head all of a sudden completely changed course, and
There it
you're
is. Yeah.
starting again, or feeling like you're starting again somewhere new, and almost like, oh, I've taken a step back even though the role is the same level, and this, that, and the other. So it is, but I've never, it's only just listening to you there that I've realized it is grief. It is grief association. And it's almost like a light bulb just triggered in me then when you were talking,
Yeah.
because we don't,
Um,
you know go on.
no, we don't. And also, I think whether it's being British, even when we've
Mm,
lost someone in grief in its sort of purest form, however you want to label it, we don't really even talk about that enough, really. And by the way, I am not an expert in grief at all. But I am an expert in change,
yeah.
and um, I've scribbled down because the word endings. And by the way, I have to say this, I scribble them down because of my perimenopausal brain. So, that's another change that's going through in my
Yeah.
my lived experience at the moment. And I have to write it down, otherwise it falls. I forget it, man. I swear to God. But endings, and there is something really important and significant about honouring endings.
Yeah.
And we talk about it a lot in coaching, in the coaching world, actually,
We do.
the significance of honouring endings. But still, it's something that we don't really do. And honouring the ending can look very differently depending on who or what is ending, I guess. But honouring the ending is really important. Why? Because again, it's the process for which we are going to be processing the emotions that could be coming up for you that are similar to grief emotions. And that it's, in coaching, there's such a spotlight that's put on the start of a coaching relationship, as in contracting, establishing safety, psychological safety, and building that rapport, if it's a one-to-one coaching relationship. And actually, I believe that the same spotlight needs to be put on the ending of the coaching relationship as well as endings of everything else, actually,
Yeah.
because it signifies to us that there's a change and we're honouring
Yeah.
it, and that's cool. But to not give an ending the airtime it deserves, that can cause, I guess, like a hangover. It creates this hangover, like it can trip us up, I think. you know you can kind of think everything's fine, la 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 la, and then whoa, something might trigger you, or something might, like, oh, what's that?
Yeah.
What's that about? Um, and so actually honouring and considering the ending of whatever it is, be that the role, ending of the title of the role, the job title, ending of the old system that you used to belong to, whether that's an organisational change, just like you said, from Dunham to Capital One, from me, from being with an organisation and now being self-employed. It needs to be honoured. And like, yeah, I'm touching my heart centre here. Like, it's important. It's important.
Mm.
And it needs to be, given the same light that you would as at the start of a relationship, actually.
And I guess you're right. I mean, we do talk about that in, we talk about endings in coaching, and but why do you think, Joe, we maybe don't acknowledge endings the same as we do, say, in coaching? In coaching, we talk about it, and it's there as a thing that we do, isn't it? But in our lives, we don't reflect. We don't kind of have that same perception. Why do you think that is?
Well, there's probably lots of reasons. If the if the change was a change that was done to you, you may not have an opportunity to honour that ending in the way that you would want. I mean, a lot of organisations now do exit sort of interviews or have an exit sort of plan, but I don't think he's given the right love, actually, or attention that he deserves. So it might be a very obvious reason that you just don't have an opportunity to sit and talk or to. But actually, if that is the case, something that I've lent into to help process my ending, and endings, be that from work endings to relationship endings, was to really like signify the ending for myself. So that was through that journaling. I like to do a lot of journaling. So, honouring the ending that way, noticing like what emotions are coming up, it's really, really powerful.
Mm.
I also think that endings are somehow perceived as negative and beginnings are seen as positive. I think, and maybe I've got the
Yeah.
wrong end of the stick, but I do think there's some kinds of light and shade that goes
Yeah.
on here, and actually, I'm thinking about my retreats that I do, the seasonal retreats, that actually, wintering, the winter season is an opportunity for us to withdraw and to
Mm.
slow down, and whilst it's cold and it's dark, but it's a really magical time for self-reflection. So it isn't necessarily summer's good, winter's bad, but I think there's something could be said of the same thing around endings and beginnings. Endings can be equally beautiful, actually. Um, if we give it the airtime it deserves. Um, I think it's really interesting, and I was another memories kind of floated up, which I feel like I want to share. I remember I moved house. It was a move that I instigated and I'd planned. I was looking forward to. Oh my goodness, I was looking forward to it. I didn't particularly like the house I was living in, so I really wanted to move into a new house. You get the idea, right?
Yeah.
The day before that move, I'd really disregarded the ending of the house because I was so looking forward to the beginning of the move, moving to somewhere new and the new house.
Yeah.
And I was like, actually, Joe, no, we need to honour the ending here. And I started to really feel quite like almost like nostalgic, even though I wasn't there very long. I
Mm.
was like, oh, maybe I am going to miss this place in a weird way. What am I going to miss? Well, I'm going to miss. Actually, I really like the colour of those tiles. I really like those tiles. I'm going to really miss having the stairs going that way, or it sounds ridiculous, but all these things were really helpful because it was closure. That's what you're doing. You're
Yeah.
closing. And when you close well, you're offering, and you're keeping everything kind of as it should, you're offering more light to come in,
Mm.
If we don't close well or end well, then maybe weeds start to grow or other things start to
Yeah.
form, and, it muddies that sort of space, I think. Did I answer your question, Stu? I don't even know what the question was. Now
Yeah.
I've gone off
No,
on so many tangents, but
no, you definitely did. I think it's I think giving ourselves that time to reflect and allow us that like you say, time for closure is really important. I think too often we try and just move on to the next thing without even thinking about it. And like you say, we want the new beginnings, but actually we need closure to then be able to have new beginnings. Without closure,
mm,
you're always hanging on to something, and whether you realize it or not, and like you say, all of a sudden it will come and catch you up. For
well,
just out of the blue. So I think that's really important. And I think if just looking at like you look at social media, you look at LinkedIn, and all the like you say, celebration is the new stuff, the new beginnings, the new roles, the certifications, all
mm,
this stuff. But we don't we don't really talk about the endings, like you say. And I think it's really, maybe that's not the place to talk about it, but I think social media plays a big part in our lives as a whole, I think now. And everybody is talks about all the good stuff, and I think sometimes you then feel like you can't talk about or have those closing moments of maybe some of the stuff that isn't so good, right? But
I think you're really, it's really interesting because I I I can only talk about my own experience. I
mm,
try to offer a bit of light and shade in the stuff that I post. The good, the bad, the ugly. And because I think it's important, I think for
yeah,
in my space as a coach, not only to do work around coaching, but also to role model. Like I'm still human. I'm a human being. I'm
yeah,
flawed. I've still got shit to deal with and stuff to think about and process, just like anybody else. And I think it's really important for coaches to sort of to do that, to role model
Yeah.
that perfection doesn't exist, and we're all works in progress, and we're all winging it in some way, shape, or form, you know. And I
Yeah.
think, but what I do think, you know, if we're considering LinkedIn, for example, that a lot of organisations don't honour endings well.
Mm.
They don't. Like, it's you know, if it's redundancy because they don't want to be seen to be the businesses doing whatever it is that they're perceiving, that they might think that people are thinking if they're
Yeah.
making redundancies. Or but I think there's something to be said, you know, like when people and human beings have dedicated a time, however long, to an organization, they've dedicated and given, okay, in exchange, of course, but they've given their time on planet Earth to an organization, then at the
Yeah.
very least, the organization, in my opinion, can honor that ending and to celebrate what
Yeah.
was, actually. It doesn't have to be bad, you know, the sad times, I guess, for the loss, but also it's an opportunity to even celebrate that time, you know.
Mm.
And I think some organisations maybe miss a trick there. Um,
I'd have to.
but I want to just nod to, sorry, here we go.
No,
But
go on.
there's also something really significant and important that I want to get across when speaking to you, um, especially for women, and that is, you know, I've kind of half joked about my perimenopausal brain, but actually, like, I'm really conscious of what's happening for me physically as well as psychologically through my life transition of being a
Yeah.
human being. A perfectly, you know, 51% of the population will go through menopause. It's not spoken about enough at all.
Yeah.
And actually, um, the loss of what you used to be like is something that I'm really noticing, actually,
Yeah.
you know. Um, God, I've only got to have 2 glasses of wine now and I'm hungover. Like, when did that happen? You know, but
Although you
I
become a cheap date, I was.
have a cheap date now, Stu. What the, my God. And I'm kind of, I kind of mourn. I've been mourning the sense of the old Joe that could go and sing, you know, 8 pints and probably be fine to work the next day. Apologies for any of my previous employers, you know. But I don't know. But there's a sense that identity, I
Yeah.
guess, is the point. That it's that,
Yeah.
like, who I was, I'm still Joe, and all of
Mm.
that, all of my lived experiences are still with me. But that's my how I'm showing up in the world is now starting to be different, and I'm
Yeah.
noticing actually, I'm noticing this stuff, and I'm giving it a bit of airtime. I'm noticing it because also, um, the narrative that women especially are fed in society is that, you know, you're kind of done now in this
Mm.
sort of perimenopause. You know, like, oh wow, maybe you're not attractive as much as your younger self. Maybe, you know, I don't know. There's a sense of like
Yeah.
not being as good as, I guess. And of course, that's not true. We know that's not true. We know this. We can intellectualize it, but actually, there's something that, oh my God, it's actually happening to me now.
Mm.
You know, I'm now that age. I'm now in this moment. This is actually happening, and um, it can be quite scary, actually. That sort of this
Yeah.
transition, how people will perceive you, how you perceive yourself. You know, all of this stuff. I'm really, I'm really noticing, and I think organisations really need to. I know it's happening a lot now. Thank goodness, people are having better conversations around women's health. Full stop. But not as it's still there's still so much work to do, Stu,
Yeah.
around this
There is.
topic.
There is absolutely, and my wife's going through perimenopause as well, and so you know, it's I'm trying to learn more about you know what that means and
Mm.
how it can be supportive and but also, like you say, within organisations there is more awareness, but I think I feel like it's still not talked about enough, and especially from a male's like perspective in terms of being a leader.
Mm.
This is sort of stuff that you need to know. You need to be aware. You need to have empathy for. You need to be able to be able to have a conversation about, right, and be open to that. And so there's a lot of work still to do. I mean, there's a lot more networks within organisations. We've got them at Capital One, and which is
Yeah.
great, and they're open to everybody, obviously. But there's still more work to do. I think not just from the women's side of things, but from the male side of things, for understanding and acknowledging, you know, what people are going through, and but also how can we then support, you know,
Mm.
because that's really important.
It is so important because if we think about, like, and I know we're entering into this topic now around women's health, and menopause, but if we think about it, when women, on average, and of course the age can differ from person to person, but on average, women will start to enter into perimenopause stage maybe from the 40s, maybe
Mm,
mid 40s. And if we think about career wise, that's kind of just when women are starting to maybe get to where they want to be career
can be,
wise.
yeah,
And
yeah,
again, of course, I'm talking, loosely, it's not definitive, but and one in, I think it's 10 women will leave their job based
mm,
on their symptoms of perimenopause or menopause. And that's not okay
no,
because there aren't enough women in senior leadership roles anyway, or represented at the top. And so, if we think about that, like we organisations, systems, we need to do everything that we can to make sure that women stay in their roles
yeah,
and have their seat at the table. And I think, um, you know, I read a really interesting statistic really, really recently, and that the average age of girls starting their periods is becoming a lot lower now. In
mm,
fact, it's around 10. I'm like, what? When I read this, I was like, what are you on about? You
yeah,
know, when I was that age, it was around 13, 14. Like, what? But it's
yeah,
coming down. And so, with that, over time, the age of menopause hitting will be coming lower. It will
yeah.
be coming lower in its imbalance. So I think there's still so much work to be done, and I think we need to think about that to support the future generations in the workplace. Actually,
Yeah, we do definitely, and obviously bringing it back to that impact of change,
mm.
and
Mm.
it's you know it's hard enough being able to acknowledge change, accept change, have endings and stuff like that. But when you're going through something so fundamental internally, and
Mm.
you can't there is no ending for you don't know when that's going to be. So it's kind of like you're constantly changing,
Yeah, yeah,
and the more we can learn about that and support and acknowledge and just be there for those people. And coming back to your point about there's not enough women in senior leadership positions, I mean, in tech it's even worse,
mm.
right? In tech it's not even in senior leadership positions, it's
Mm.
in all positions there's not enough females and women in those roles. So we talk about women in tech a lot, and these are the sort of things we need to acknowledge about how we can support and in a male dominated environment. um, so yeah, there's a lot there that we need to do. It's as I say, there's definitely shift. There is definitely a shift happening, but there's more and more we need to do. And it's the same thing from a men's mental health perspective as well. You
Oh,
know, it's. I mean, I acknowledge, right? I've been the worst over the years of sharing my emotions. Not so much now. I'll openly, I'm much more okay with that. But years gone by, I would be the one that would be like, no, I'm staying firm. Doesn't matter what's going on. I'll support everybody around me, but I'm not going to tell you diddlies about me. You know, um, and that messed me up. To say
Ah,
the
no,
least.
no
You
shit,
know,
Sherlock. Did it
honestly,
really?
yeah, exactly. So I think I've over the last few years, I've really kind of had almost like just a realization that you can't live like that, and you've got to acknowledge it. You've got to talk about it, and you've got to share how you're feeling.
And
And
Stu, what then? I'm asking you a question now. What was the
yeah,
turning
please.
point then for you when you said, previously you used to hold on tight to your emotion, keep them
Yeah.
safely locked away from the world and yourself, maybe.
Mm.
Was there a significant sort of turning point that made you change that
Do you
behaviour?
know? Do you know what it was? It was as I grew into being in more leadership type roles. The burden of the pressure of leadership, the pressure of having look, essentially being there for everybody was just kind of too much. Not yeah, well, yeah, yeah. Do you know it was too much, right? I'm going to be honest. It was too much.
Yeah.
Um, and a few years ago, I've not really told many people this, but a few years ago, I was, you know, um, really down and just nobody would have known because I'm laughing Stu on the outside, smiling
Mm.
Stu on the outside, um, and yeah, I just had moments where I would just break down, and obviously that being able to then talk about things and just started helping, but also the other realization it was more around how can I lead people if I can't take
Mm.
time for myself, be honest with myself? How can I support people if I
Right.
can't do that? You know, how can I expect people to open up to me if I can't even open up myself? So
Mm.
there was a lot of that at play, and I think as the years have gone by, especially being in the leadership type roles, it's just a bit of a realization of like you can't you can't live like that, you can't be like that, you can't um, expect people to be what you're not, and I think that for me was you know and it's sometimes I still have moments where I'm like, no, I'm just gonna keep it in and just keep it away from everybody else until I figure out what's going on myself before I and other times I'll just go bleh and just let it out. So and it's and I think this is why when you were talking earlier about the grief side of things, it was almost like a moment for me then. It's like it is that acknowledgement. It is that endings. So we need acknowledging endings and stuff like that, and that can really help. Just let go of some stuff, let go of some baggage you may have been carrying for so
Yeah.
long that you don't really realize is having such an impact on you.
Mm.
It's weighing you down, and yet
Mm.
it was in the past. It's nothing. Um, so yeah, I think it's just sort of over time being in these the types of roles that I'm in now. Obviously, also, my son is 16. Um, I don't want him growing up thinking he can't talk about
Oh,
his
yeah.
feelings and stuff like that. Um, so I want to be a role model to him. Um, so yeah, I think sometimes I am quite open with my feelings. I think sometimes he's like, "Oh, shut up, dad. Shut up, dad. I'm gaming. Shut up." But yeah, but look, I think it's really important that men are able to and able to open up but they have the forums to do so, and I think that's getting better.
Yeah.
But I still think that like with the perimenopause from a female perspective, there needs to be a bigger acknowledgement from a male mental health perspective as well. So, but again, any these things can be triggered by any sort of change. It's,
Absolutely.
you know,
And let's do the life transition bingo, shall we? So you've got house moves, you've got relocation, you've got change of job, you've got redundancy, um, you've got empty nest thing, when they go off to
yeah,
uni. You can have the loss of someone significant
yeah,
or thing, even pets, man, God, it's exactly the same.
yeah,
You could have the change of physical change, be that
yep,
from a scar or yeah, all of these things.
yeah,
Yeah, like there's a friend of a friend. She had a colleague, I think, relocate to Australia, and she was absolutely devastated, really
mm,
devastated, because of the change. That she was totally, the loss was massive.
yeah,
So again, just honoring that there's a grieving process that we have to go through for all of those things. Divorce, marriage, relationships, and to reiterate the point that I lived through, that this can show up even on a what you thought it might have been like, and
yeah,
when that doesn't, then you're like, oh man, what's this all about? um and one thing is for sure, we cannot avoid change. We're constantly changing. Like, nothing stays the same ever. Everything is
yeah,
changing. I'm changing since we first pressed record on this podcast. Constantly changing. And so actually, when we start to, yeah, that's okay. These are inevitable. It's going to be inevitable. Oh, what am I noticing? What's that emotion? What could that be from? What's that about? All of those things will be really, really helpful. And I say really, really helpful, really important, actually. And I really, by the way, I really honour your vulnerability sharing about your own struggles with mental health, especially as a man. And I'm sure what a bloody brilliant role model you are to your son and to your members of your team. And I think, I hope that anyone that's listening, especially if you, well, it doesn't matter if you're male or female or any or non-binary, who cares? But by giving yourself permission to grieve the change, I think will be really blooming beneficial, actually, whatever that change may be.
yeah,
And go, oh, okay, yeah, I'm feeling a bit angry, or I am feeling a bit sad, or I am. Notice it. It
yeah,
won't. Those. Here's a mic drop. You are not your feelings. They come, they bounce about a bit. Sometimes they stay a little bit longer than you want. You
yeah,
know, sometimes you've got to really invite them to leave. They overstay their welcome, but you aren't them. So when I talk about noticing feelings and emotion, it is almost like inviting people to observe your feelings, from an observer standpoint. Like, what are you noticing? What emotions are there? What are present? Give them the airtime, because that's what they want. To be felt. And when you feel it, you start to, I guess,
yeah.
heal it.
And this is where mindfulness can play a big part as well, can't it, Joe?
Hmm.
Taking that time to notice how you're feeling in the moment, and
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
allowing yourself that time to just reflect and take it in, and you know,
Yeah. And mindfulness isn't the practice of sitting zen cross-legged, in fact, the mindfulness, and I practice mindfulness, is actually when you notice something, you're pulling it back to the present, and just observing it and bringing it back, and just sitting with it, sitting with whatever it is. But it's, I'm touching my own heart center. It's so important not to go, oh God, and also, I should be over this by now, is what I hear a lot from
Yeah.
people. Oh, that change that happened, that was a year ago now. I should be over this by now. No, who said? By
Yeah.
whose rules? No one's living by the same blueprint. But and rather honoring every emotion that comes up and giving it airtime will certainly aid the process of change, or the emotions that change can bring up.
Yeah. I'm just taking a moment now, just taking what you're saying, if I'm honest.
And also, Stu, you said about like the grief and how you've attached that label to the loss of someone or something. And it really isn't. In fact, I like I say, I'm no expert in this, but there's like I think it's the Grief Recovery Handbook, that people can go and train to be a practitioner. And I think their definition is something like it's the loss or change or loss of something. It isn't a death of
Yeah.
anything. It's the change and the loss of something. That's what they their definition of grief. And so when you think about that, like to your point earlier, Stu, we're grieving all the time, actually.
Yeah.
But
And we
that
just
doesn't
don't know
necessarily have
it.
to be like but also it could be a
Yeah.
fleeting moment of, I'm quite sad about that. I'm sad about that because I'm going to miss blah, blah, blah. Right. And it can be done. But sometimes it might take a little longer, or it might need a
Yeah.
little bit more thought or a little bit more consideration.
Yeah.
And that's
I think,
that's important.
yeah. And I think, like you say, it's noticing it in the moment, acknowledging it in the moment, and like you say, letting it go or bringing it back, whatever you need to do to, you know, create that moment for you to reflect and just, and if it is an ending, then taking that time to end something,
Mm.
but also I think sometimes, just not sometimes, but just celebrating endings.
Yeah.
They don't endings don't have to be bad.
Mm-mm.
Even though they may make you feel that way to start with, taking the time to actually celebrate them and say, right, okay, what's next for me? You know, what amazing thing is coming? You know, and just having that sort of that positive spin on it as well can really help.
Beautiful. And so it might be, and what comes up is quite a classic coaching question around, by saying no to this, what
Mm,
am I saying yes to? By acknowledging the ending of this, what am I giving space for? And I think that's really, really helpful in how we kind of navigate change, and how we manage all the emotions that can come up with that. And that we need to, both of them need to have their airtime.
yeah,
And we're so like forward focused so much, and the next thing, the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. Stopping and observing what's happening, what we might miss, what we're looking forward to, by saying yes to this. What am I saying no to? By saying no to this, what am I going
yeah.
to potentially be saying yes to? Is, I think, so blooming important.
I think it's so powerful. I think it's you know just it just puts a different spin on it, a different light on it, and helps you deal with those situations in a different way. I could talk to you about this for so much longer, Joe. I'm gonna have to get you back on because
Oh, listen, give
you
me a
know
topic and we'll talk.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
can chatter and chatter for England. Um, I yeah, I was about to go off on another tangent, but I won't. I will hold back for next time.
Yes, well, yeah, look, I'm definitely gonna. You'll definitely be coming back, whether you like
Yes,
it or not.
love
Right? This
that.
is a. This is not an ending.
It's
This
not.
is
Oh,
a.
I was about to say
We're
what we're on the same page. This is not
pressing
the
pause.
ending. This is just the beginning. Is there a song in that? I think there is somewhere, isn't
I
there?
think there is now, definitely.
There is now.
There is now, absolutely. So yeah. Look, Joe, I can't thank you enough for coming on.
I can't
You
thank
know,
you enough for inviting me.
yeah, I've learned some amazing things tonight just by chatting to you, and I've had some realizations as well. So, yeah, it's it's been a great and to all the audience and listeners, where can they find you, Joe, if they wanna hear more?
I'm on LinkedIn as Jo Reeves, as in Vic or Keanu. Um, and yes, I'm on LinkedIn. JoReevesCoaching.com is my website. Come and
Brilliant.
link with me on LinkedIn though. And you know what? I'm always up for a cup of tea, virtual cup of tea. So if anything's resonated with anyone and you want to have a natter about it,
Yeah,
do it.
yeah, definitely do. And we'll I'll put the links in the notes for the
Oh,
show notes
thank
as
you.
well, so people can connect with you. But again, thank you so much, Joe. I really, really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's been amazing. Hopefully, everybody's really enjoyed this episode. You know what you need to do. You need to subscribe to the YouTube channel. You need to subscribe on Spotify. Follow us on LinkedIn. But mostly just keep tuning in, keep enjoying the episodes, give us feedback because without your feedback, obviously, we can't keep improving things. Um, and yeah, be safe, people. Look after yourselves. Acknowledge those endings.
Close the endings.
Acknowledge those endings. Just like now. Let's acknowledge this ending for a moment.
Oh, I'm already I'm acknowledging how much I've enjoyed this time. I'm acknowledging how easy it is to speak with you. I'm acknowledging like I'm in awe of your setup and I'm already missing the Pac-Man lights.
Oh, I'm emotional now. Oh, that's amazing.
Observe it. Observe the emotion.
Yeah, I am. I am literally going to observe the emotion. Absolutely. But thank you so much, Joe. Thank you, everybody, for listening, everybody for watching. Um, join us next time for another episode of Quality Talks podcasts. Good night. Take care.